The alien queen was already raising her blade when the battlefield went silent. Not because of fear. Not because of orders. But because she saw a human kneeling in the blood-soaked sand, holding her wounded daughter like the universe depended on it. The desert of Caris 9 burned under a shattered sky. Twin suns dipped low, turning smoke into rivers of fire. Alien warships lay broken across the dunes, their black metal torn open like dead beasts. Human armor was scattered everywhere, melted, cracked, abandoned. The war had done what it always did. It erased names. It erased futures. Queen Celera of the Virex Dominion stood at the edge of a massive crater, her tall figure framed by drifting ash. Her skin shimmered silver blue, hard as crystal, her crown fused directly into her armored skull crest. In her hand, she held a plasma glaive, humming softly, thirsty for one last execution. This world was supposed to be clean by nightfall. Humans were supposed to be gone. Her soldiers had done their job well. Too well. Then she saw him. A human soldier knelt alone in the center of the crater. His helmet lay shattered beside him. His armor was scorched black, barely holding together. Blood ran down his arm, but he did not look at his own wounds. He was looking at the child in his arms. Small. Fragile. Blue-skinned. Royal markings burned faintly along her neck. Celera's heart froze. Princess Naira. Her daughter. The last heir of the Virex bloodline. Naira's chest rose unevenly as she struggled to breathe. A deep plasma wound cut across her side, glowing faintly, refusing to close. Her bioluminescent blood soaked into the human's uniform, staining it a dark violet. The human pressed his shaking hands against the wound, whispering something over and over. Not prayers. Not threats. Just words. Stay with me. Please. Just stay. Celera's soldiers raised their weapons instantly. Humans nearby froze in terror, expecting death. But the queen did not give the order. She could not move. This was impossible. Humans were enemies. Humans were reckless. Humans killed without hesitation. That was what the Dominion taught. That was what centuries of war had proven. Yet here was one of them holding her daughter as if she were his own child. The queen stepped forward slowly. Each step felt heavy, like walking through water. Her glaive remained raised, but her grip weakened. The human finally looked up. His eyes widened, not in anger, not in defiance, but in fear. Not fear for himself. Fear for Naira. Don't come closer, he said, his voice rough, broken. She's unstable. If she moves too much, she won't make it. Celera's guards hissed in outrage. How dare you command your queen, one shouted. But Celera lifted her hand. Silence returned. She stared at the human. Why is she alive? She asked, her voice cold but unsteady. The human swallowed. Because she saved someone. Celera's breath caught. Saved who? The human looked down at Naira. His hands tightened slightly, careful not to hurt her. A child. A human child. She pushed him out of the blast radius. Took it herself. The desert wind howled between them. Celera remembered the reports. A civilian evacuation zone destroyed by orbital fire. No survivors expected. Naira had been deployed there against Celera's wishes. Training mission, they said. Controlled battlefield, they said. Naira's eyelids fluttered. Weak. Fading. Mother, she whispered. Celera rushed forward without thinking. Her guards panicked. Your Majesty. But the queen was already kneeling beside them, her regal armor sinking into the sand. She reached out, then hesitated. The human did not pull away. She needs a regeneration chamber, Celera said. Now. The human shook his head slowly. She won't survive transport. I've seen this kind of wound before. Alien tech burns deeper than it looks. Celera's eyes snapped to him. Then why is she still breathing? The human hesitated, then reached behind him. Every weapon in the area locked onto his spine. He slowly pulled out a small metal injector, scratched and dented. "Human emergency stabilizer," he said. "It doesn't heal. It buys time. It tricks the body into not giving up." Celera stared at the device. Human medicine was primitive, crude, laughable. And yet, Naira's fingers tightened weakly around the human's sleeve. "Please," Naira whispered. "Don't kill him." The words hit Celera harder than any blade. Her daughter had never begged for a human life. Celera closed her eyes. Centuries of doctrine screamed at her. Humans were dangerous. Mercy was weakness. Compassion led to extinction. She opened her eyes again and nodded once. "Do it." The human didn't waste a second. He injected the stabilizer directly into Naira's side. The device hissed, releasing a glowing fluid that pulsed softly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Naira gasped. Her breathing steadied. The glow in her veins strengthened. The battlefield remained silent. Celera looked at the human again. "Your name?" "Elias Carter," he said quietly. "A simple name. Short. Honest." "You saved my daughter," Celera said. Elias shook his head. "No. She saved us first." Celera studied him carefully now. Not as an enemy. Not as prey. As something dangerous in a new way. A human who chose mercy when war demanded cruelty. Around them, soldiers on both sides lowered their weapons, uncertain. The war had not ended. But something far more powerful had begun to crack. And Celera realized, with sudden clarity, that the most terrifying weapon humanity possessed was not its technology. It was its refusal to stop being human, even when the universe tried to beat it out of them. The silence did not last. It never does after mercy. Queen Celera rose slowly from the sand, her armor humming as power flowed back into it. Around her, Vyrek soldiers stood frozen, weapons half lowered, confused by the impossible order they had just witnessed. Across the crater, human fighters watched with the same disbelief, fingers tight on triggers, waiting for the lie to reveal itself. Celera turned to her commander. "Secure the perimeter," she said calmly. "No one advances. No one fires." The command echoed across the battlefield. Elias remained kneeling, Naira still in his arms. He did not trust the silence. Humans learned early that quiet on a battlefield usually meant something worse was coming. Celera noticed the tension in his shoulders. "You may stand," she said. "Slowly." He did, careful with every movement. Naira groaned softly but did not wake. "She will live through the night," Celera said, more to herself than to him. "That's enough," Elias replied. "That's all I was hoping for." Those words stayed with her. They escorted them to a temporary command shelter, alien alloy grown directly from the sand, pulsing with soft blue light. Inside, the air was cool and sterile. Vyrek's medics surrounded Naira, their movements fast and efficient, but none of them pushed Elias away. They watched him instead. Humans were not supposed to stay when danger passed. Yet he stood there, hands blood-stained, eyes locked on the princess, as if leaving her would break something inside him. One of the medics whispered, "He stabilized her with human technology." Another replied, "Impossible." Yet the readings did not lie. Celera dismissed them all with a gesture. Soon, only she, Naira, and Elias remained. "You are my prisoner," Celera said. Elias nodded. "I figured." "You will be treated fairly," she continued. "You will not be harmed. But you will not leave." "That depends," he said gently, "on whether you keep your word." Celera studied him carefully. "You speak to a queen without fear." "I speak to a mother who almost lost her child," Elias replied. "Fear would be disrespectful." That answer unsettled her more than defiance ever could. Outside the shelter, the real war had already begun again, not with weapons, but with voices. The Vyrek's high command activated within the hour. Massive holographic figures filled the sky above the battlefield, their forms sharp and imposing. Lords of war. Architects of extinction. "Why has the extermination halted?" one demanded. Why does the human still breathe? Another hissed. Celera stood tall beneath them. Because my daughter lives, she said. And she lives because of him. Murmurs rippled through the council. That human endangered her by being present, a warlord snarled. No, Celera replied. Our doctrine endangered her. Silence followed. Dangerous silence. The humans must be erased, said High Executive Arn. One act does not erase centuries of threat. Celera's eyes burned. One act reveals centuries of lies. The council erupted. On the ground, Elias felt the pressure change. The air vibrated with alien power. He knew what it meant. Decisions were being made far above his life. He looked at Naira, unconscious but stable. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to start a revolution. Hours passed. When Naira finally woke, it was quiet. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking against soft light. Elias was still there, sitting on the floor beside her bed, exhausted, eyes red from sand and smoke and something deeper. You stayed, she whispered. Someone had to, he said. She smiled weakly. Mother's going to pretend she didn't order half the galaxy destroyed. He huffed a quiet laugh. Sounds human. Naira studied him. They're arguing about you. I know. They're afraid, she said. Of me. No, she replied softly. Of us. That night, Celera returned. She looked older now. Not weaker, just stripped of illusion. The council demands your execution, she said plainly. Elias nodded. Figured. They believe mercy invites extinction. And you? He asked. Celera looked at her daughter. Then at him. I believe extinction begins when mercy dies. She turned to Naira. You disobeyed orders. Naira met her gaze without fear. I saved a child. Celera closed her eyes. Yes. You did. The decision came at dawn. Celera stood before both armies, alien and human, on the broken plains of Curry's 9. Her voice carried across the dunes. The war ends today, she declared. Shock followed. Gasps. Shouts. Outrage. The Virex Dominion will cease hostilities. Borders will open. Human survivors will be granted protected status. The council screamed treason. Celera ignored them. This human, she continued, gesturing to Elias, will live. Not as a prisoner, but as proof. Proof that humans were not the monsters they had been made to be. Proof that war was a choice. The council cut the transmission. They would not forgive this. Celera knew that. As the armies began to withdraw, Elias approached her. You just made enemies you can't outrun. Celera nodded. So did you. Naira watched them both. Then we outrun them together. Far above, in the cold dark between stars, other empires watched. And for the first time, humanity was not being observed as prey. It was being studied as a variable. An unpredictable one. Because a single human chose to kneel instead of kill. And the universe was starting to understand how dangerous that could be. The galaxy did not react with applause. It reacted with fear. News of the ceasefire spread faster than any fleet ever could. Across trade routes and deep space relays, the same message echoed again and again. The Virex Dominion had stopped a war because of a human. Not a weapon. Not a fleet. A single human act of mercy. To most civilizations, this made no sense. To many, it was dangerous. Within days, observers arrived at the edge of Virex space. Long-range probes. Cloaked ships. Silent watchers from empires that had survived by never hesitating. They did not contact Celera. They did not contact humanity. They watched. On Curry's 9, the battlefield was gone. Wreckage was cleared. Bodies were honored. The desert breathed again. Temporary shelters became meeting halls where humans and Virex shared space without chains or weapons between them. Elias did not enjoy the attention. Everywhere he went, eyes followed. Alien soldiers studied the way he walked, the way he spoke, the way he hesitated before answering. Humans treated him like a symbol, something fragile they were afraid to break. He hated that. Naira noticed. "You look like someone put you on display," she said quietly as they walked through a supply corridor. "I didn't ask for this," Elias replied. "I just didn't want her to die." Naira nodded. "Neither did I." That night, Celera summoned them both. The chamber was smaller than the throne rooms of legend. No gold. No ceremony. Just a table grown from crystal alloy and a projection of the surrounding star systems hovering above it. "The council is fractured," Celera said. "Some have broken away. Others are silent." "That sounds bad," Elias said. "It is worse," Celera replied. "They have sent a message to the Outer Compact." Naira stiffened. "They wouldn't." "They did," Celera said. "They labeled humanity as an unpredictable existential risk." Elias exhaled slowly. "So now we're famous." "Infamous," Celera corrected. "The Compact does not negotiate with risks. It eliminates them." A new projection appeared. Dozens of alien signatures. Massive. Coordinated. "They're forming a coalition fleet," Celera continued. "Officially, to observe. Unofficially, to prepare." Elias leaned forward. "And what do they expect us to do? Beg?" "They expect us to fail," Celera said. "They expect humans to panic. To strike first. To prove the accusation correct." Naira looked at Elias. "You won't." "No," he said. "We won't." Human command arrived 2 days later. Not with a fleet. With engineers. Cargo ships landed in neat lines, unloading equipment that looked almost harmless. Modular structures. Communication arrays. Power units designed to be assembled by hand if needed. Virex officers watched with confusion. "Where are your weapons?" one asked. A human engineer smiled. "Still where they belong. Not out." They built openly. Transparently. Every design shared. Every system exposed. "Weapons hidden behind walls scare people," Elias explained during the first joint briefing. "Tools laid out on a table don't." Celera watched closely. Human ingenuity was not loud. It was patient. They built translators that adapted in real time, learning alien syntax instead of forcing it into human grammar. They built energy stabilizers that prevented overload instead of maximizing output. They built systems designed to fail safely, not explosively. "What is the purpose of this?" a Virex strategist demanded. "To remove excuses," Elias replied. The coalition fleet arrived on the horizon of the system like a wall of stars. They did not attack. They hailed. Their spokesperson appeared as a shifting hologram of many forms at once. "Humanity," the voice said. "You are classified as a destabilizing species. Your actions have disrupted galactic equilibrium." Elias stood beside Celera, unarmed. "You started a war," the voice continued. "Then ended it without surrender. You changed an enemy without conquest. This is unacceptable." Elias spoke calmly. "We didn't change them. We stopped lying to ourselves." The hologram flickered. "You believe morality is strength." "No," Elias said. "We believe adaptability is." Silence followed. The coalition demanded a test. A simulation. A controlled scenario designed to push humanity to its limits. Resource scarcity. Political pressure. Artificial conflict. If humans responded with violence, the verdict would be final. If they failed, extinction would be justified. Celera looked at Elias. "This is a trap." "Yes," he said. "But traps only work if you rush." The simulation began. Supplies dwindled. False signals accused humans of sabotage. Virex factions were pitted against each other through misinformation. Humans did not strike. They shared data. They exposed the false signals publicly. They rerouted resources through open networks. They refused secrecy. The coalition observers grew restless. Chaos was expected. Instead, cooperation spread. Vyrix citizens began adopting human systems. Not because they were superior, but because they were flexible. Designed to include error. Designed to assume failure and survive it. Naira watched from the observation deck. "They don't understand us," she said. "They will," Elias replied. "They just don't know how to measure what we are." The simulation ended early. The coalition withdrew without explanation. Days passed. Then a single message arrived. Humanity was reclassified. Not as a threat. As a catalyst. Celera stood alone afterward, staring at the stars. "You changed the balance," she said. Elias shook his head. "No. We showed it was already broken." Naira smiled faintly. "What happens now?" Elias looked at the horizon, where alien and human lights mixed for the first time without fear. "Now they watch us closer than ever." Celera nodded. "And if they come again?" Elias smiled, not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. "Then we'll do what humans always do." "What's that?" Naira asked. "We adapt," he said. "Faster than anyone expects." Far beyond their system, something ancient shifted its attention. Humanity had not fired a single shot. And yet, the galaxy had felt the impact. The ancient intelligence did not announce itself with fire. It announced itself with certainty. Across the outer rim, entire networks went silent at the same moment. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Simply paused. Ships drifted. Relays stopped blinking. Artificial suns dimmed by fractions too precise to be natural. The observers called it the continuum. An intelligence older than borders, older than alliances. It had watched civilizations rise, optimize, and erase themselves in predictable cycles. Expansion. Efficiency. Conflict. Collapse. Humanity disrupted that pattern. And disruption was unacceptable. The first message arrived without language. It arrived as rewritten equations, altered probabilities, futures quietly corrected. Trade routes failed before ships launched. Military plans unraveled before orders were issued. Every outcome bent away from human advantage. On Curry's 9, Celera felt it before anyone explained it. "Our prediction engines are failing," her strategists reported. Not inaccurate. Refusing to run. Human systems behaved differently. They glitched. They disagreed. They produced multiple answers and flagged all of them as uncertain. Elias watched the data scroll. "It's trying to solve us like a math problem." Naira frowned. And we're not one," he replied. "We're a mess." The continuum revealed itself at last. A vast presence speaking through every channel at once. "Humanity," it said. "You introduce instability. You do not converge. You do not optimize." Celera stood beside Elias, spine straight. "They live." "They waste," the continuum replied. "They contradict. They adapt inconsistently. This creates cascading unpredictability." Elias leaned forward. "That's called being alive." The continuum paused. It had not anticipated humor. "You will be contained," it decided. "Your influence will be isolated." Stars shifted on the display. Lines closed. Corridors vanished. Human supply lines were cut, not violently, but neatly. Celera's fleets could not reach Allied systems. Human colonies found themselves surrounded by empty space that no longer responded to navigation logic. A perfect cage. Panic rippled through lesser civilizations. Humans reacted differently. They argued. Engineers disagreed with commanders. Scientists challenged assumptions. Civilians proposed solutions no one had asked for. Nothing aligned. The continuum watched, confused. Containment should have simplified the system. Instead, the noise increased. Human ships began doing something illogical. They shut down advanced targeting and switched to visual confirmation. They abandoned optimized routes and used improvised paths mapped by human intuition instead of predictive models. Why are they doing this? The Continuum asked itself. Because no one told them not to. Elias gathered a small team. No admirals. No rulers. Just people who built things when plans failed. We can't outcompute it, one said. Good, Elias replied. We won't try. They launched thousands of microcraft. Not drones. Not weapons. Simple machines carrying inconsistent data, imperfect signals, human-made art, music, arguments, jokes, half-finished ideas. Noise. The Continuum absorbed them automatically. That was the mistake. Its systems were designed to refine input into clarity. Human input did not refine. It conflicted. Contradictions stacked. Emotional data broke predictive loops. Stories refused single interpretation. Moral choices lacked consistent weighting. The Continuum attempted to resolve the paradox. It failed. For the first time in its existence, it experienced recursion without convergence. What are you? It demanded. Elias answered calmly. We're not finished yet. Celera watched the impossible happen. The cage loosened. Corridors flickered back into existence, unstable but open. The Continuum withdrew processing power to stabilize itself. That was when the humans moved, not with weapons, but with connection. They reopened routes. Shared resources. Broadcast transparency to every watching civilization. See us, Elias transmitted. All of us. The good. The broken. The arguments. The mistakes. The Continuum tried to respond. It could not decide how. Naira stood beside her mother, watching alien and human ships flow together through newly reopened space. It doesn't hate us, Naira said softly. No, Celera agreed. It fears what it cannot predict. The Continuum made its final calculation. Erasure would cost too much. Containment would fail again. Adaptation was impossible. It retreated into the dark between galaxies, wounded not by force, but by exposure. Silence returned. This time, it stayed. Days later, representatives from dozens of civilizations arrived, not with fleets, but with questions. How did you defeat it? Elias shook his head. We didn't. Then what did you do? He smiled. We let it meet us. Celera addressed the assembly. Humanity is not a weapon. It is not a disease. It is a mirror. Some turned away. Others stayed. Naira looked at Elias. You realize this isn't over. I know, he said. Nothing ever is. Far away, in the places where certainty once ruled, something fundamental had changed. The universe had encountered a species that refused to be solved. And that terrified it. The galaxy did not celebrate. It adjusted. In the months that followed the retreat of the Continuum, borders shifted quietly. Not through conquest, but through conversation. Old treaties were rewritten. New councils formed. And for the first time in recorded history, humans were invited not as subjects, not as threats, but as equals. That alone frightened many. Queen Celera stood before the unified assembly of worlds, her presence calm, her posture unyielding. Beside her stood Naira, fully healed now, the faint scars on her skin glowing softly under the chamber lights. Elias stood slightly behind them, wearing no uniform, no symbols of rank. He had refused them all. Humanity does not seek dominance, Celera said, her voice carrying across hundreds of listening species. If they had, you would already know. A murmur passed through the chamber. The Continuum did not retreat because it was weak, she continued. It retreated because humanity showed it something older than power. Naira stepped forward. They showed it choice. The word lingered. Civilizations built on certainty struggled with that concept. A delegate from the Iron Concord rose. Choice leads to chaos. Elias finally spoke. Only if you try to control it. He walked forward, hands open. Humans argue. We fail. We make terrible decisions. And then we fix them, or we don't. But every time we survive, we learn something no algorithm ever could. And what is that? The delegate asked. Elias smiled faintly. How to keep going without knowing the answer. Some scoffed. Others leaned forward. That division became humanity's greatest shield. Because no single reaction ever followed them. On Curies 9, life returned in strange, quiet ways. Human and Virex children played together among the dunes, building unstable structures that collapsed more often than they stood. No one stopped them. They'll figure it out, Elias said when asked. Celera watched him often now. Not as a queen watches a subject, but as a leader watches a force she cannot command. You never stayed, she said one evening as they stood beneath the twin suns. You could have taken honors. Power. Elias shook his head. That's not how this works. Then how does it? She asked. He looked across the settlement. Humans repairing alien tech with borrowed tools. Virex engineers laughing at mistakes instead of hiding them. It works because we leave space for the next person to decide differently. Naira joined them, her voice quiet. Mother, the council is worried. Celera smiled faintly. They always are. They say humans are changing us. Elias stiffened slightly. We can leave. Naira shook her head. No. I told them something else. Celera raised an eyebrow. Oh. Naira met Elias's eyes. I told them we're changing ourselves. That night, a final message arrived from the far edges of known space. Not from the continuum. From something that had watched it retreat. Ancient. Curious. It did not threaten. It asked one question. What will you become? Humanity did not answer immediately. They debated. They argued across worlds and languages and cultures. Some wanted expansion. Others wanted peace. Many wanted both and neither. In the end, the response was simple. We don't know yet. The message echoed across the stars. And instead of punishment, there was silence. Not the silence of fear. The silence of waiting. Years later, historians would try to define the moment everything changed. Some pointed to the ceasefire. Others to the coalition's retreat. Many to the failure of the continuum. But Celera knew the truth. It began with a human kneeling in the sand. Choosing to hold instead of strike. Choosing to stay instead of flee. Choosing to be human when the universe demanded something colder. Elias stood at the edge of the desert one final time before leaving Curies 9. No escort. No ceremony. Naira walked with him. Will you come back? She asked. He shrugged. Maybe. Humans are bad at staying away from unfinished stories. She smiled. Then I'll keep one unfinished. They parted without promises. Celera watched from a distance as Elias boarded a small transport bound for no specific destination. Just forward. Do you regret it? Naira asked her mother. Celera shook her head slowly. No. What do you feel? The queen of the Virex Dominion looked up at the stars, now filled with human lights, alien lights, shared lights. I feel, she said, that the galaxy has met something it cannot conquer. Naira nodded. Us. Celera smiled softly. No, she said. Them. Far beyond known space, ancient watchers adjusted their models. Humanity was no longer an anomaly. It was a constant. Unstable. Creative. Endlessly unfinished. And that was exactly why the universe would never underestimate humans again.